Your multi-billion-dollar corporate employer will continue to run with or without you. It's just a reality. And that is exactly why you need to build your own legacy alongside your corporate role. In today's episode, former NCAA athlete and tech chief of staff Fred Sharp shares how he leveraged his enterprise software experience to launch a sports venture fund while excelling at his day job and creating his pathway to optionality. So let's dive in and let's get you to optionality. Today's episode is sponsored by Billy Keels Advisory Services. If you want to learn more about how to make your 99 optional, just go to makeitoptional.com. Once again, that's makeitoptional.com.
Helping you build freedom without losing your edge. This is the Going Long podcast with Billy Keels.
One of the reasons that I love being the host of this podcast is I consistently get a chance to sit down on the other end of this microphone and hear from some of the most amazing people with amazing stories as well as experiences, and I get to share that with you. And guess what? Today's conversation is absolutely not the exception to the rule, because you're going to get more greatness here. Because today's guest, you know what? Not only was he a former NCAA Division One college athlete, but then after that, and he went to the corporate world, his last stop, he was hand selected to lead the office of the CRO, which is the Chief Revenue Officer of a $4 billion, that is with a B, a $4 billion line of business at the company. And I think it's probably about 2,000 plus employees globally. And he's then taken that experience and he's parlayed that into something which is really, really interesting, which I'm sure you're going to love. Because today he's the managing partner of a venture firm that's focused on investing in premier sports teams. Yes, I did say sports teams, as well as leagues, real estate, as well as tech, that shape not just fan engagement, but also athlete empowerment. It gives me great pleasure to welcome to today's conversation the managing partner of Clubhouse Ventures, Mr. Fred Sharp. Fred, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you for having me, Billy. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, man. You know what? I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be absolutely phenomenal. There's so many different things that you've done. I haven't even talked about the over 60 countries that you've operated businesses in and been able to travel. And I'm going to let you tell everybody about your global perspective on things. But one of the things that I do want to just really open up with is there's this sentence, and I'm wondering what your take is on this. Is it about who you know or who knows you? And tell me why that's something that's important for you and what it is that you're doing today.
Yeah, no, I think growing up, you hear a lot about it's what you know and who you know. But as I've gone on to this endeavor, which we'll dive into more, I really think it's about who knows you, right? Because when you think about sports investing, I want Clubhouse Ventures to be that go-to name in people's mind. And so I think it just flips the adage a little bit to where you need to be out promoting yourself, telling people what you're doing. And if you're doing business the right way, treating people the right way, your name's going to ring well in a lot of those circles. And so I'm just a big proponent of, it's who knows you. And I forget who told me that, but that's kind of one of those idioms that I've tried to live by since I heard it.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. And you know what? By the end of today's conversation, I have a little inkling that a lot more people are going to know who you are. So, and so we just kind of opened up some of that now today. But, I didn't really get into a lot of your backstory, but I would love for you to, help us understand who is Fred Sharp? How can we get to know more about you and give us a little bit of your journey?
Yeah, so absolutely. I was born and raised in Metro Detroit, Michigan, here in the United States. My mom was an All-American hurdler in college at Oberlin. My dad was a basketball player, and my brother's been playing baseball professionally for the last 10 years. So just to give you an idea of the household that we grew up in, and then not to mention my mom was a civilian in the Army, the U.S. Army, and my dad was a federal agent for 35 years. So between athleticism and structure and rigor, that just kind of shapes my mindset. But for me, athlete as well, ended up playing baseball at Bowling Green State University, was a walk-on, which is another, mindset shift that I went through there in my formative years. Ended up winning a conference championship my senior year and got to play on ESPN against those blue blood schools, which was an amazing experience. But like a lot of athletes, when we get done playing, you spend so much time focused on that growing up. You don't really know what you're good at besides your respective sport when you're done. And so that hit me like a ton of bricks, and I didn't know what I was good at. And so I started off with a job at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. I did that for maybe 2 years. On a whim, decided to move to Arizona because I lost a bet with a buddy, and was fortunate enough that after being there for about a year and a half, ended up getting a job at a global software company, and so I did that. Sold software for about 2.5, 3 years to Fortune 500 companies on the West Coast. And then, as you mentioned there in the intro, I was asked to be the chief of staff to one of the executives, specifically the chief revenue officer, helping lead the operations for his office, as well as the global operations for that division. And so I was 30 years old at the time, wet behind the ears, didn't really know what I was getting myself into, but credit to him for seeing something in me that I maybe didn't see in myself. And then that global experience was invaluable in shaping just how I see the world, how I see sports today. And then that experience being able to, travel the world and lead teams across, multiple different countries and have a perspective on how different cultures and ethnicities do business, and really help shape, what we're doing now. And, I think that's a beautiful lens and a leeway into this next phase of my career.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you giving us that background. There's one thing that's really interesting. So you said 30 years old, wet behind the ears, and you're having this opportunity to run an office of a 4 billion with a B, and I insist on saying that again just to help people understand the magnitude of that. But there's this question and it's one of the things that I hear a lot when you can be in corporate and you're working your role and you're there's this thing about readiness. I think I was even posting about it today or yesterday. I can't even remember, on LinkedIn. When you accepted that role, even though you were handpicked, did you feel that you were 100% ready for that role? And if you did not, what made you go ahead and continue to lean in anyway, even though you weren't 100% ready?
Yeah, I think I may have tried to trick myself and tell myself I was ready. It's funny because I was thinking about this last night, actually. I think in the moment, you're just so focused on doing what you need to do to survive and keep your head above water. You don't really realize the magnitude of what you're doing at such a young age. And I remember the first week in the job, I got noticed like, hey, we need to go to Dubai. We're having a senior leadership meeting. And so you're in this room of executives that have been with the company for 10, 15 years. And there's this feeling of being a small fish in a big pond, right? But very quickly, I think the best leaders help you realize that you're meant to be here. And so I think that was what happened to me, to where very quickly, I maybe had to trick myself at the beginning, but very quickly realized that, hey, I can do this. I know I can do this. And I think it goes back to the sporting days as well, where you start to play up against older kids and you get this like, hey, they're bigger than me. But then when you realize and you step between the lines, it's the same game that you've been playing. And so that was I think that's the way that I look at it now, where I was watching baseball on TV and there's college kids now throwing 100 miles an hour. And like, man, like, how do you hit that? But 20 years ago, that was me, right? And it's just now that I've had time to sit back and reflect, and it's like you can really do amazing things when you set your mind to it. And I think that applies both to sport as well as business, specifically when I stepped into that role probably 6 years ago now.
Yeah, time flies, doesn't it? It makes me think about that Roger Bannister effect, right? You maybe think you're not ready, but that person who famously broke the 4-minute mile, and then after he broke no one had ever done it until I think 1954, and then once he did it, all of a sudden it was like 11 people did it in less than, I don't know, I think it was 3 or 4 years after that. And it was like, okay, well, maybe you're not 100% ready, but once you actually are in the room and you have exposure and you have someone that actually can see the potential that you have and help mold that into talent, it's one of those things that, well, over time, then that allows you to then pay it forward, which I think is great. So you mentioned this, this hand selection, and also too, there's intentionality. I happen to know there's some intentionality behind that. But, when you think about the career that you wanted to craft while you were in corporate, talk to us about how much, yes, there's the hand selection, but how much was it also too about you being able to say you wanted to mold your career in a certain way, or was everything just by luck, or kind of how did that work for you?
Yeah, I was very intentional about wanting this role, because in my mind, as I mentioned, you didn't really know what you were good at coming out of playing baseball your entire life, and so stepping into that sales role and realizing that, hey, I can sell this, right? And then you stepping into the chief of staff job and realizing that, hey, I can lead, or I'm good at the operational aspect. I'm good at managing these teams and different cultures, and so it was very intentional around winning that job because it was a stepping stone for ultimately what I wanted to get to of being, a CEO, right? And so it was very intentional around talking to the right folks, making sure that I aligned with a leader who also believed in me and was able to help me get to that path. And so everything that I do is with intention. And so that was definitely one where it wasn't this fly by night thing where the job was posted and I said, hey, I'm going to apply. It was a lot of conversation with folks that I knew that had been with the company long enough to tell me, hey, this is a good position. This is not. There was a lot of no's for other roles that had opened up previously. And then ultimately, I landed in the right spot.
Okay, fantastic. And so as we think about this, there's another element that I would say everyone that's watching and or listening here to the Going Long podcast there's this concept of, being able to build a profitable side business. We haven't really touched on that yet. So everybody here knows, like, during my corporate career, of course, I enjoyed my corporate role. I was, was doing the top talent thing. I was at a global level, a regional level, a local level for the last 7 years of my corporate career, working here in the Spanish market and building a business on the side. Now, I didn't start it that way. It was just, I wanted to make some investments. But do you happen to have any side business ventures or anything that you want to talk to us about, and kind of when that started for you would be great insight?
Yeah, I think so. Stepping into a role was very fortunate that, when you got to that level, there were different perks that came along with it than your traditional quota carrier. So between RSUs, stock options, things like that, it opened my eyes to things that I had not previously known. And so it started with real estate. Like, everybody thinks that, hey, I can buy an apartment complex and collect rent, and it's easy. Learn the hard way that is not the case. And I always just found myself being drawn back towards the sports ecosystem. And so I was fortunate enough to invest within a small venture fund with my own money. One of those first investments was into a sports tech company that was backed by the NFL and a couple of other notable names. And so that is what helped me learn how to invest, what to invest in, and what makes a good investment. And then from there, just kind of off and running. And so from that point forward, I had been building what is now Clubhouse Ventures for the last 3.5, 4 years to get to the point now where we did 4 deals last year within the sports tech space, as well as one team investment. And then this year, we just publicly announced our investment within a new professional women's volleyball league that's entering its 3rd season. And so we are investors in the San Francisco franchise alongside Steve Kerr, Ronnie Lott, Jeremy Lin, and a couple of other notable Olympians and powerful women in and around the Bay Area. So it's, as you can attest, it's not something that I've been actively doing, full time for a long time, but it's something that's been slowly and steadily building. And then when the opportunity to go full in, I jumped at it, and excited to continue to see this thing built.
Well, I love that. So the origin actually started while you were still in your corporate role, and while you were building, it's since something that has continued to now take on a life of its own in the form of Clubhouse Ventures. A lot of times when we are like, well, let me ask the question. Did you have this sense while you were working in your corporate role and you were exposed to the RSUs and different, EDSPs, employee discount stock programs and things like that? Was there a moment when there was this voice inside of your head that said, hey, listen, Fred, yes, you're good in your role. And at the same time, there's this desire for you to do something else outside of the scope of your role. Did that ever happen to you? It's like an internal voice.
Yeah, I don't know if there was ever a voice that said, hey, this is the time now. I think it was a culmination of different things. I've always, as I mentioned before, like very intentional about certain things. And so as I noticed, was able to make more and more investments. And as you go out and raise money and people are saying yes, it lets me know like, okay, there's something here. Right. And so I don't know if it was more so of an internal voice, but more so a validation from outside investors that believe in what we're doing to the point where, hey, if there's, 3 or 4 investors willing to give you 6 figures to go invest in this thing that you've diligenced, that you put a memo together for, and you can articulate why this is going to be a solid investment 5-10 years from now, maybe there's something here to where this is something that I should give more time and attention to. And so I think that was the voice that I needed to say, okay, like you're doing the right thing here. And then obviously with some of the other things falling into place, it just made sense.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. And so then we go back to this idea of being able to, you're getting your base hit, you're getting a double and you triple, and then eventually you're going to be able to go. But there's this also the notion of your corporate life. This is one of the things I've been talking about a lot lately, because people tend to, like, as you know, I really had a very positive corporate experience, and my guests, generally speaking, that come here also did. But there is a reality. It's like every relationship. Even life taught me this, right? Every corporate relationship ends. There is no right, there's no wrong, but it's just, I would love for you, I've shared my story multiple times here, why my corporate relationship ended. Can you maybe give us some insight into that? Because one of the things that this helps for everybody is to realize, like, there's so many different stories, and there are reasons why a corporate relationship will end, and there's also life beyond that. So could you give us a sneak peek behind the scenes, if you will?
Yeah, I think for me, it was, a combination of the investing and wanting that to start to take off, and how much work that goes into it, and raising money. You need to give it the attention that it deserves, right? I think that's number one. Combine that with the perfect storm of my boss at the time, who believed in me, who I really respected, and to this day stay in contact with, leaving. And then you combine that with the opportunity for me to leave on really good terms that set the foundation for me to really go in and dive 2 feet in to the investing space. So like you said, every corporate relationship ends. Mine was a positive ending. I have nothing but good things to say about my time in corporate. Do I wish things sometimes would have went another way? Absolutely. But I have no ill will towards corporate. I really enjoyed my time working with people in corporate. But I think now it's just time for me to be able to, guide my own path and do things the way that I want to do them, which is going to turn out to be a great thing for both me and my family.
Yeah, no, that's a great focus, and being able to have the experience, the corporate, I don't want to put a lot of words in your mouth, but to have that experience, and then also be able to leverage that experience and be able to bring your own dream, your own goal to fruition as well. One of the things that you talked about, because you were in some rooms that were, very influential, and some would say powerful, influential, however you want to call it, or a combination of the two. And from your perspective, when you are in the corporate role, I'd love for you to get your unique perspective on this, because you talked about your boss left the company, right? And how much of what you were exposed to is about the actual knowledge that you have in terms of being able to create new opportunities within corporate, that, and I'm going to be a bit polarizing here, that versus like alliances and networks within corporate, in terms of being able to get things achieved.
I think corporate is a very, there's the political side of it, there's the red tape, but then there's also the get stuff done side, right? And I think for me as chief of staff, like the job was just to get things done. And I think if you can, on one side, when you're in those influential rooms, it's, hey, can this person get things done? And I think the best executives and best leaders are very much of that mindset of, hey, can they get things done? And their job is not to circumvent the red tape. That's your job as the operator, right? And so for me, I view that as, okay, if they're looking at me to get things done, how can I, on the alliance and partnership sides, figure out how to cut through that to get things done? And I think a lot of it is there's egos, there's goals, there's whatever it may be. And so for me, it's very much trying to put myself in everybody else's shoes to figure out, what do you want out of this? How do you benefit? And then how can we shape an outcome that makes sure that everybody gets what they want? And like any negotiation, you're not going to get everything, but if both sides can get a little bit of what they both want to come to the acceptable outcome, then that's the goal. So I view it as that, like, hey, I want to get stuff done, and I want to get things done in a way that's going to be able to benefit both sides. And at the end of the day, make everybody look good. And so that's how I view the corporate world. And I think I try and view that from that lens now. But as you know, it's tough, right? Because everybody wants something that the other person may not want. And so, but at the end of the day, the best leaders, they want to get things done. And I think if you can come prepared, if you can come with a point of view, and you're willing to stick by that point of view, whether or not that group may think that you're right or wrong, I just think it builds a sense of credibility that is going to help you stand apart from some of the others.
Yeah, that sense of credibility is something that serves you well while you're inside of the corporate walls, and then later it will serve you well beyond that. Another question, because you are talking about this experience and where you were, you talked about the credibility. Now that you're out, you've had a couple of years outside of corporate now, and I believe, and the more and more clients that I work with, it becomes super obvious to me that while you are in corporate, and I don't think that everybody is, needs to build a side business, but when you're building a business on the side that could eventually become something else, like, hey, listen, how can we learn from other people who have been there? People like yourself, Fred. When you look back on it now, the skills that I like to think they're your career capital that you were building up over this period of time. Can you talk about some of those skills and you've mentioned some of them already, but I really want to just kind of a block of the skills that you were developing, that you were mastering during your corporate career that are now also skills that you can highly leverage to be able to help your clients today. What can you maybe give us a couple of those skills, or maybe highlight some of the ones that you talked about before?
Yeah, I think the first one that comes to mind is preparation, right? Mm-hmm. Going into a meeting in the corporate world, there's usually a brief with, all the information that you need to know going into it. And so being able to go into a meeting, knowing who you're meeting with, what are their goals, what are their objectives to help shape the conversation. I think now looking at sports teams, leagues, what have you, it's still the same thing, right? Because these investors, whether or not they're endowment funds or individuals, they're relying on you to bring good deals, right? And so, they're going to go through their diligence process. But if you're prepared with the memo and why you think this is a good deal versus a bad deal, and kind of the different outcomes that can come from this, I think it just builds, again, that sense of credibility that you talked about. That is your what people think of you, right? And so if you come back with another deal, you've got that credibility built in. They're more than likely going to take you serious. So number one, I think is preparation. Two, I think it's just how you treat people. Number one, and it sounds so simple, right? But the best leaders that I've been around on the business side and the best athletes that I've been around are very similar in terms of, number one, how they prepare, whether it's for a game or a meeting, but also how they treat people. And again, not everybody's going to agree on certain topics, but there's an element of respect that should be had in every conversation. And so I always want to come into these conversations with a level of respect, knowing that you have your perspective, your point of view. I may not agree with it, but at the end of the day, there's a reason we're on this call, right? There's a mutual understanding or mutual agreement that we're trying to get to whether decide on an investment for a specific business unit or project within the corporate environment, or there's a deal here on the sports side that we both like, but we may not agree on some terms, but we both want to get it done. And so I think those are the two that immediately stand out to me, and that's kind of been my operating North Star as both on the corporate side and now with the new venture.
Yeah, all right, perfect. So from preparedness as well as the way that you are treating others. So want to take a step back as well, but roll right into Clubhouse Ventures, because I really want to help. I want you to help us get to know you more once again. And so what started as a I'll call it side business, where you had some early successes, and that eventually has now become what you are leaning into full time. But there's also this moment of really understanding, like, how did you get there, and how do you figure out like your sweet spot in you? And as you're listening to Fred explain this, like, he's going to share his version, and I want you to think about how you can adapt it to your life. But Fred, it's really about, how do you get to a point where you know that you want to lean into something that will add to fan engagement as well as athlete empowerment around, and what most would call an alternative asset. And so, because sometimes we don't really know where to go, where to start. How do we figure out what our side business is going to be or could be?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think, it didn't start that way, right? It started as sports investing, right? And then you realize that there's a lot of people that want to do that. And so what is that unique differentiator? And I think for me, like, I'm a fan. And so I think there's a perspective from how fans watch the game that is archaic in nature. And then working in tech, you realize how advanced tech has come and how that can help not only benefit the fan, but the teams. And then on the athlete empowerment side, like, I've been an athlete as well, right? And granted, I played in a mid-major, so I wasn't at an Alabama or a USC, but there's plenty of people out there that are willing to take advantage of you because you're in a vulnerable position and you have visibility on campus or from a national media perspective. And so how can I, as an athlete that's been in those shoes, help them understand what to look for, how to make sound investments, but even broader than that, the experience of being able to help run a large business. The athletes are going to be done playing in their prime of their life, right? More times than not. And the ones that don't play professionally, they're done at 21. So how can I, as a former athlete that's gone through that process, help them navigate that next step in their life, while at the same time, exposing them to some really cool things that, if all goes well, should make some outside returns in the out years. And so I think being able to have operate from both of those lenses is a unique proposition that not a lot of other capital allocators in the space have.
Perfect. Well, like you said, and so I guess the thing that I really want the Go Along family to listen to is basically, Fred, you haven't tried to reinvent the wheel. As a former Division One, NCAA Division One athlete, you've been there, you enjoyed that. Also, you had a track in technology, and you could see how technology can actually increase the experience of a fan. And you're simply recognizing things that you enjoyed, and you're bringing them together to help others solve their problems. Is there anything that I missed there or made it too simple?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to start using that as I explain to people, because that was really simple and easy to understand.
Run with it, man. This just comes through, as you continue to work with clients in a similar way. It's many times the things that you want to be able to help others solve, it's a result of things that you didn't like, or experiences that you already have that you can make the experience even better. And so Fred is giving you a fantastic opportunity to learn from his own experience so that you can do something similar. Maybe yours is not sports. Maybe it's that you've enjoyed coding in a particular way, or doing something else and helping, I don't know, single dad, single mom, something like that. So, but usually the answers are much closer to you than you would think. Fred, want to come back to Clubhouse Ventures. So we've talked about it at a really high level. We've talked about some of the things, but tell us really, who is the person that you are serving today through Clubhouse Ventures? How, basically give us a sense of who is that person and what is that issue that you're helping them to solve, quote unquote.
Yeah. So Clubhouse Ventures was designed as an investing firm that allows, whether it be high net worth individuals, family offices, endowments, what have you, invest across the sports and entertainment sector. So to date, a lot of our investors include corporate individuals that, like us, had RSUs and these stock options that are looking for different ways to allocate their investments outside of your traditional stock market, equities, etc. There's family offices that have generations of wealth that are now starting to see more money flow into sports and realize that sports returns aren't correlated to the stock market. And you've got real estate and other tax depreciable assets that you can then play off of. And then, as we look to grow, we'll look to start in university endowments and things like that. But really, we've designed this as a platform for all folks that are interested across sports. I think at the end of the day, whether you live in Barcelona or you live in Los Angeles, we're a sports fan in some way, shape, or form. And now the access to own your favorite team is a lot lower than it has in the past. And so we want to be that platform or that company that allows investors to invest, treat them right. And we're not looking to take advantage of anybody. We're just looking to give people access to things that you otherwise wouldn't have access to, with a really, really cool group of investors that, can do interesting things together.
All right. Fantastic. So, it sounds like if you like sports and you like being able to be around other people that are wanting to generate not just interest, but also profit, then this sounds like a good thing where you should probably reach out to Fred, right? It's about more people who get to know you. One other thing, man, before I want to give you a chance, but there's just this thing in the back of my mind that just keeps coming up because, there's this saying that proximity is power, right? And so there's a number of different aspects of what you've talked about, whether it's corporate, whether it is in your current, managing partner of Clubhouse Ventures. I'm just curious about what you think about that saying, and also if you have actually seen that in real life, or if that's something that just sounds like complete garbage and it's not, in your experience, is not true.
I think it's 100% true. I was in New York not too long ago, and I think the proximity of folks that are doing very similar things and being able to share ideas, from my experience, everyone that I've come across has been extremely helpful, and they want to see other people win. And so when you're able to surround yourself with folks like that, rising tides lift all boats, right? I know it's a cliche saying, but and even here in Detroit, there's a small group of folks doing the same thing, but even the folks that just grew up in Detroit want to see other people win. And so being able to be around them, being able to be in New York and feel the energy, that I try and get there as much as I can, just because I walk away feeling enthused and excited. And so by all means, like we talked about before, being intentional about where you put yourself and the rooms you put yourself in is very much something that is front of mind and something that, I don't take lightly.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. One last thing, and then I've got a last question for you. But there's this thing about businesses on the side and having a senior leadership, I'll call it a senior leadership role. And that can be, you can be a chief of staff, or maybe you are a senior AE or a director. And there's this concept, and I know in the beginning I struggled with it a lot. This concept of being able to perform well in your role and be okay with also building your own dream on the side. A lot of people struggle with that. I struggled with that in the beginning. I'm just curious, because you had a very internally in your corporate role, very high profile role. You were constantly traveling, planes, trains, automobiles. You were preparing, you were performing, you were performing at a high level. I'm just curious if you ever had that kind of like, I can't be doing something on the side because everybody sees me, everybody knows me, they'll feel like I'm not committed. Or was that just me and like 3 or 4 of my friends that have kind of gone through that struggle?
No, it's definitely me as well. Like to your point, you've got this visibility that not a lot of people have, right? And there's this notion that you've got to be on 24/7. And if you're seen doing something outside the realm of your role, the thought is, are you really giving that role your full undivided attention? And so, for me, I was very quiet about what I was doing. There was a few folks that knew, but it wasn't something that I told a lot of folks about. And so, I think there's definitely that stigma, and depending on who you're working for, what company, you have to be cautious about that. But fortunately, like I mentioned before, I had a really good boss who, when we knew our time was coming to an end, I started to fill him in, and he was very supportive of that. But I know I was blessed in that sense to where I had that support. I know other people don't, but I would say at the end of the day, whether there's that stigma or not, don't be afraid to do it. Right? I think there's ways to make it work. There's things that you can do to still be successful in your side business. So I wouldn't let that notion deter you, right? Because I think at the end of the day, these corporations are going to run with or without you. And like you said,
that probably just hurt. Or either that, or maybe someone wasn't listening. But Fred, you're gonna have to say that again, please. Can you please repeat that? What you just said?
These corporations are going to run with or without you. And like you said, I had a highly visible role. I was able to see it. When executive steps out, it may take a couple of weeks to get the next one started. But at the end of the day, the company's still going to keep going, and somebody's going to be required to do that work. So don't be afraid to have a life outside of the corporate environment and do what you enjoy. Right?
Yeah. No, it's wise and very similar, right? I mean, the important thing is you have to continue to perform in your role. That is a non-negotiable. Perform in your role. For many years, I kept it quiet too, Fred. I didn't say anything to anybody. I was very, very fortunate to have an amazing boss as well. As things started to get bigger and, in terms of my side business, I was able to share. But I also found that a lot of the things that I was doing and learning on my side business actually made me a much more proficient executive while I was in the company as well, because it just gave me a different perspective, a different confidence, a different way to look at things. But the environment has to be the right environment. Don't not be performing in your role, and then all of a sudden you're telling everybody you got a business on the side. That's probably not a very good thing for your career. probably detrimental to your career. So, one last thing, Fred. Unless there's anything else that you wanted to add or feel like we haven't talked about that you want to.
No, not at all.
Okay. So one of the things that I used to think is that for a long time, everything that I felt like everything I'd touched turned to gold, and things were just working every single time. And, the portfolio was bigger. I was going to Hawaii more frequently. The attainment figures, everything was going really, really well. And then recently, or in the not too recent past, life helped me to remind me of a couple of things. Not everything goes according to plan. And so what I realized in that moment, Fred, was that when things are going according to plan, we don't tend to think about it because they're just going according to plan. But when things are not going according to plan and you're at the bottom of that valley, right? And if you're watching us on the video, you can see me kind of like curving the bottom of the valley. That seems to go on forever because you're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get out of this. But whether you're really, really high or really, really low, those are both moments. And now that you are on the outside of the corporate world, I'm sure you've experienced these things. But one thing that helped me was no matter, like I had friends and I finally learned how to, really lean in and let other people know that, hey, listen, I'm going through a challenging time. I've never done this before. I haven't been here before. And I had lots of friends who poured into me, who loved me, who cared for me. But it wasn't until I actually literally looked myself in the mirror and said, hey, look, man, like this is a bad moment, but this also too is just a moment. I literally said something to myself, and that like changed things for me. And it was like, okay, now it's time to get out of this valley and start moving to the top. And so I want you to imagine between now and the next 3 years moving forward, there's moments where you're going to be at the high, and then there's moments where you're going to be at the low. I really want you to think about the moments where you're at the low, and let us be inside of your mind for a moment. What is the one thing that you're going to look back 3 years from now and go, you know what, Fred, I'm glad that you said that because I needed to hear that to get out of this low moment. What's that one thing that you know you need to say to yourself, and you're going to look back and go, thanks for saying that, Fred. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's funny. I thought about this the other day because I'm building this for a legacy, right? I got two kids who I want, them to be able to have that optionality. And I think for me, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, when I look back and going through those rough moments, it's going to be, think of the first 12 months, right? And just think of how hard it was to get that first deal done, or how hard it was to get, everybody in line for a decision on that first deal, or, when that second deal hit and you had a guy back out at the last minute and you had to go backfill it. And, at the end of the day, you were able to get through those things and get those done. And so, in those hardest moments when you're trying to make a name for yourself and it doesn't go your way, but now you're 10 years in. So something had to go right. Right. And so I think for me, it's being able to sit back and just think about those early struggles in the grand scheme of where we are 5-10 years from now, and how this is so much bigger than we probably imagined when we first started, and know that, hey, another 5 years from now, we're going to look back at this moment and laugh as well, because we're that much bigger. So, for me, I think playing baseball helped a lot too, right? Because for the listeners who don't know, to be a good hitter, you're going to fail 7 out of 10 times, right? And so, going through that, growing up, and realizing that it's not about it's about the next at bat, right? And so, how quickly can you flush that current loss to get to the next one? And so, I think that for me is what I'm going to lean on when you're going through those dips in the valley there 5 years from now. It's okay. Just remember the baseball days. It's not about this last at bat. It's about the next one. But also realizing that, hey, those first 12 months, there was 4 or 5 deals that you couldn't get the capital together, or you had somebody back out. And at the end of the day, that didn't stop you from going back to that same investor for the next deal and winning them over. And so, for me, that's what I'm gonna lean on here when I'm having those doubts.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you saying that, and it's just so visual to think about. Okay, yeah, it's 7 out of 10. If you get 3 out of 10, that's a good thing. So it's not thinking about what just happened; it's thinking about what's getting ready to happen. So, really appreciate that, man. And I just look and I'm like, man, the time flies. We're literally out of time. And so I'm thinking at the beginning of the conversation, you're talking about your family and growing up in a household full of athletes, and whether it was your mom or your dad, or also the military. So you've got the rigor, you've got the focus, your brother that you talked about as well, and even yourself being able to perform at an extremely high level at the NCAA, the Division One, and one of the greatest conferences ever, by the way, because I'm also a graduate of the exact same conference. It's conference, not school, but conference. But being able to have the fortitude to walk on, and then be able to be able to make your dream become a reality. And then once that portion of your dream was done, then you decided, hey, you know what? I actually want to tackle this sales thing. So you head out to the Southwest, and you head out there and you really get involved in sales, and you get in on the rental car side of things. And then eventually you get into tech, and you're into tech and you're performing at an extremely high level. And then you're realizing, like, you're very intentional about the way that you are forging your path in corporate, recognizing where are the areas that you want to continue to leverage your sales, moving into more of leadership of people, influencing, being able to also manage an entire office of 4 billion with a B once again, and thousands of employees around the globe, and being able to influence and being able to really get the rigor around what you talked about, being prepared, recognizing how other people are treating one another, and having those as a cornerstone of the way that you are also now building your business and serving others through Clubhouse Ventures. And so I know that my entire Going Long family, I say my Going Long family because they're here with me every single couple times a week, they want to know, Fred, how can we find out more about you, more about what you're doing with Clubhouse Ventures, so that so we can be in touch? Please, just yeah. So I'm going to be quiet, everybody. So Fred, help us out, man. How can we find out more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. So website is under construction. We've been secretive, but clubhouseventures.net, that will be up and running here soon. LinkedIn, you can find me at Fred Sharp, and then email, which I'm very quick to respond, Fred at clubhousecapital.net. That is our investing side. And so again, those three options there. But again, we've got a number of deals in the pipeline across the sports, the tech, the real estate ecosystem, and would love to continue to build and grow with like-minded investors that are interested in the same things we are, but can also provide value outside of just capital, because that's big, right? Money. A lot of people have money, right? But if you can combine money with a skill set that not everybody else has, that's the unique value driver that we tend to find ourselves leading with.
All right. Fantastic. Well, listen, everybody, you've heard it. You've got his email. You can find him at clubhouseventures.net. And also when you when you reach out to Fred on LinkedIn, do me a favor, because I ask it all the time. When you reach out to him, just let him know. Send him a personalized invitation just so that he knows that you've already invested time. It's going to make the two of you, your conversation, it's just going to be that much more effective, and your guys are already getting to know one another. You can tell about the things that Fred was telling about already and all that kind of good stuff. So listen, Fred, on behalf of the entire Going Long family, I want to say thank you very, very much for deciding to invest your time with me, with us, and really appreciate it, man. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
All right, Going Long family, once again, I will be back with another episode. We'll be back soon. So go out, make it a great day. And thank you very, very much.